Welcome to the webinar today. So I'm going to give you a brief tour of DueDil. If you've got any questions at any point, feel free to ask. There's a little chat box in your GoToMeeting link. So we'll make sure that we answer any questions that you may have at the end of the session. Brief introduction about myself. My name is Marie. I've been at DueDil for about 7 months now, so I'm a business development manager and I look after mainly technology and financial companies. So I'll be the one giving you a tour of DueDil today. Now, in terms of what we're going to discuss today, it's very straightforward. It's only going to last about 30 minutes or so. So I'll start by giving you a brief introduction on DueDil, what's our mission, where we are today, and what we're different. I'll then jump into a short demo where I'll show you how you can identify new businesses that you're not aware of and mitigate risks about the companies that are important to you. And then we'll wrap up with a few customer success stories. Okay, so brief background about DueDil first. So we've been going for about 7 years now, and our mission is to become the world's largest source of private company information. Today, we're the largest in the UK and Ireland. So we provide literally access to every single company in those two countries. And as we grow, we will be expanding to more and more countries over the next few months. I'll show you a brief roadmap shortly. So we help companies fulfill two purposes. The first one being to find opportunities. So this is more targeted to sales teams. And the second one being mitigate risks. That's more aimed at compliance and finance teams when they look at the companies that they deal with. And our vision is to be the fuel for a more informed and connected economy. So we want to be able to provide any company in the world, any person in the world, full transparency on the businesses that matter to them. So where we are today. So to this date, we're already covering a number of countries in Europe, mainly the UK and Ireland, where we've got about 4 million active companies that you can access. And more recently, we've launched in Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, France, Germany, and Nordics, giving you access to over 40 million companies in those markets. And as you can see, we're growing quite quickly in terms of the data that we make available to our users. So this year, international is a big focus for us. We're extending our coverage on the number of companies, moving from 11 million companies back in 2016 to 100 million companies by the end of 2017. So we'll be adding about 30 European countries by the end of this year. And our goal is that by the end of next year, any user of DueDil will have access to over 200 million companies, including the US and APAC. Now, as you can see, we work with a wide variety of clients. This can range from financial companies such as Investec and Currencies Direct, all the way down to tech companies like Dell or Uber. More recently, we've also started working with companies like Deliveroo. So as you can see, literally any type of company can use DueDil to find opportunities and to mitigate risks. So what makes us different from other solutions that you might have come across in the past? So we provide the richest information on private companies and the people who run them. By richest, what we mean is richest in terms of quantity, so the number of companies that you can actually access through the platform. Richest by depth, what we are able to tell you about each of those individual companies, but also context. And you'll see that DueDil has been built on a single layer of data, meaning that we're able to give you full context and the full linkages between all the companies and the people who run them. You'll find that it's a very intuitive user interface. It requires very little training. It it's very easy to use, maximizing engagement and surfacing the most relevant information. And then it also integrates seamlessly with any internal systems that you may already have in place. So one of the ways that you can consume our data, for example, is through our API, which can integrate with literally any system that you have. All right, so I'm going to jump into a brief demo now. Let me just switch screen. All right, I'm back. Okay, so this is a DueDil main interface, and when you log on the platform, what you'll find is that you see all the active companies by default, except for the UK and Ireland. So you can see here today, because we update the platform every single day, today there's about 4 million active companies in the UK and Ireland. Literally every single companies registered in those countries are already on the platform. So what that means for you is that all your clients, all your prospects are already in DueDil. It's just a matter of you trying to find the ones that are the best fit for you and match them to your clients as well. So the Find Companies section is pretty straightforward. This is where sales team or marketing teams are able to map out their white space. But for marketing divisions, for example, the way they would use this section is to build their account-based marketing or their account-based selling strategy. So mapping out their white space, identify all the businesses that could be a good fit for them, but that they are not working with yet or that they are not aware of yet. So you can segment your market in various different ways. There's about 60 different filters that you can leverage. Today I'm just going to focus on the key ones that are the most common, starting with the industry. And I just wanted to stop here a little bit because there's different ways that you can leverage industries to surface your market. So you'll see down here, you can identify companies by SiSI codes. Now they were good back in the days. They're still okay for when you target companies that are a bit more old-fashioned and traditional, like manufacturing and construction. However, as you can see here, SiSI codes, so basically this is the way companies register themselves when they register with Companies House. So they use a set description for their business. The last time it was updated was about 10 years ago, which means that it can be a little bit obsolete for people who, like me, for example, who target more niche companies like tech companies, more recent companies that didn't really exist back in those days. But the other issues that you sometimes have with SiSI codes is that a third of the businesses in the UK are registered under other business activities, which means that once you start using C codes, you may miss out on all of those businesses who didn't register themselves properly with Companies House. So what we've developed instead, and by the way, you can still use SiSI codes, but what we've developed in addition, what goes over and above any other solution that you may have come across, is the industry keywords. So there's about 30,000 of them. And the way that we have identified them is by scraping the company's websites about us pages of every single businesses in the platform to identify the keywords that best describe the nature of what a business does. So here it allows you to be a lot more granular. And so when you, for example, imagine that you're targeting retail companies, if you just rely on SiSI code, you're probably just going to rely on retail or very generic keywords. But using industry keywords, you can be a lot more granular and say, actually, within the retail, I like to target shoe manufacturers, or I like to target luxury watch manufacturers. So here you can type literally any keyword that you want. You can also exclude keywords. So this section is super useful. This is where you're probably going to be spending a lot of time if you are involved in sales or marketing. You can then source businesses by location. So in terms of trading or registered address, could be as big as a region or as narrow as a postcode. In terms of size, there's different ways that you can segment those companies. Could be anything from the turnover. We do a lot of work with private equity companies as well, so they would rely more on the EBITDA figures. So either really works. The only thing I would like to mention for turnover is that if you guys are targeting companies that are turning over less than 10 million, it's not guaranteed that you'll be able to get the turnover for those companies, just because they are not legally obliged to disclose that information if they generate less than 10 million a year. So just wanted to draw your attention on that. You'll still be able to isolate those businesses, but you won't have any turnover against them, basically. And then as you go through the filters, you also see that you can isolate the businesses by growth. So a lot of my clients, for example, they have a lot of success with high growth companies. So the way that they would use DueDil is by going in, looking for companies in a sector, specific site, and then they ask the platform to only show companies that are growing by at least 50% year on year, for instance. So you can see it's quite intuitive. I'm not going to go through every single filter today, but it's pretty straightforward. And then once you've got a company results page that is acceptable for you, so a few hundred results usually, because after that it becomes not too manageable, you can do a number of things. So you can save the results in a list which will sit in DueDil, and you can also export the list as a CSV file if you want to then re-import it in your CRM. And if you have Salesforce, you can import it straight into Salesforce without exporting anything. Now let me show you what a list looks like. So that's just an example I built before the webinar for companies that may be targeting retail clients, such as footwear and shoe. So I've isolated all the shoe companies or companies that are involved in shoes and footwear in the UK and Ireland that turn over at least £10 million a year. And as you can see here, I've come up with about 600 companies that could be a good fit. So here you can actually edit the columns in those lists to make it more relevant to what's important to you. So if you're interested in knowing the age of those companies, you can do that. If you're interested in knowing what's the EBITDA of those companies, you can add columns. If you want to move the turnover column and put it right at the beginning, because this is the most important thing for you, you can do that. You can add the turnover growth as well. You can really manipulate, reflects what's really important to you in terms of data. Okay, so that's the first way that you can create a list like that. There's a different way that you can achieve a list, because we've talked about how you can pull out data from DueDil. We haven't really talked about how you can put in your own data in DueDil as well. So for example, most of our clients, the first thing that they would do when they start using DueDil is that they would upload their client list on the platform. They chuck it in DueDil to do a number of different things. The first one is that they're then able to clean up the data that they have about all their clients. But most importantly, and this is particularly relevant for marketing people who are responsible for building territories for their sales teams, when you upload your client lists on DueDil, and it's very easy. So the way you would do that is you're going to save list. You'd create a new list. You'd call it client list, for example. And by the way, I'm saying clients, but it could be lists of prospects as well. So you can start uploading those companies on the platform. Simply upload a CSV file, and it takes a few minutes, and you will have a nice looking list like the one I was showing you. And the goal here, as I said, especially for marketing people, is to have a look at what your ideal customer profile looks like. So if you're trying to build a territory for your sales team, you could easily click on the top of that list here, View as Report. You'll be able to see exactly how many clients you've uploaded, so that's kind of top level, but also within your pool of, say, top 100 clients that you've uploaded, in average, how much do they turn over? How big are the companies that you typically work with? Now, in that list that I've created for the shoe companies, imagine this is your client list. We can see that the main chunk of those clients turn over between 10 and 17 million pounds a year. So that's already one aspect of my ideal client sorted. But then moving on to the age of the company, typically, again, within your client list, how old are the companies that you work with? Are you working with startups? Are you working with more established companies? And again, here you'll be able to see the same breakdown. The same applies for employees, so it works exactly the same way. And then, really important thing here, the industry. So in average, what industries do your clients operate in? So you'll probably find that you're aware of some of them, maybe the biggest boxes here. But what you also find is that there's probably some smaller industries that are popping up in that report about your existing client that either you weren't aware of, you hadn't thought of, and you can easily have a look there and say, all right, actually, I hadn't tried that yet, but I think bags would be a really good industry to go after, for example, say if you serve the retail industry. And then you can reuse that data that you've leveraged from your existing client base to go back into find companies and enter those findings about those clients to isolate more of those ideal clients that you want to target. So that's it from a market segmentation point of view. Now, moving on to getting more insight about individual companies, and this is going to be relevant for both sales and compliance and finance teams. So you'll see that every single company that you've seen in that list I've created, each of them will have their own profile page where you'll be able to learn more about that company. For example, if we take ASOS.com, so we can see in the key information that company characteristics, industry keywords, so they mainly operate in fashion, shoes, mail order houses. So this is all of the back of using web scraping tools of their website. Now what you can do here is identify similar companies. So imagine you're already working with ASOS.com. Go inside their profile page and try to see if there's any other similar companies that you can isolate. So here by default, we've ticked all the boxes that describe the business, but you can easily untick, say, if you just want to tick shoes, you can untick sale, untick the rest of it, and then the more you untick, the more granular it will be. And it also by default maps it out with similar companies in terms of turnover, and you can see here there's about 88 companies that are similar to ASOS that you could potentially target. Again, this is very straightforward, so I won't walk through each and every single aspect, but you'll be able to see who the directors are, for example, and what other businesses they're also director of. So again, imagine that ASOS is a client. Go inside that profile page, have a look at the directors, and see what other businesses those directors are also involved in, because that way it allows your team to focus on the lower hanging fruit, and then from a compliance point of view, it really allows you to make sure that you're partnering with businesses that that are good for you, that don't infringe any restriction that you may have in terms of the type of businesses that you can actually work with. You'll be able to see the group structure of those companies. So in this case, ASOS, it's not too complex structure, but there's about 4 entities here, with ASOS PLC being the head office, and then there's grouped tongues as well. So here again, if you're already working with ASOS, have a look at the group structure, see what other companies are part of the same group that you're not working with yet, but that could potentially be a good fit. This is a great way to cross-sell. And then finally, this is more relevant to finance people here. You'll be able to access up to 20 years worth of financial data. Literally everything is there, from balance sheet, profit and loss, top-level financial data, and the growth data next to it to tell you whether the company is growing or in decline. And likewise, again, more for compliance team, you'll be able to leverage DueDil as a credit checking tool to make sure that the businesses that you work with comply with your internal compliance regulations. So you can generate a report that will give you a score from 0 to 100. And that's pretty much it. So I could go on for hours and hours. I'm going to stop here. Just wanted to show you a brief background on how you can leverage DueDil, how much of an end-to-end solution the solution is. And I'm just going to finish up now with a couple of success stories. I'm just going to change my screen again. So we work, as I said at the beginning of the conversation, we work with a number of different sectors, from financials to consulting firms to food companies, marketing companies. So more recently, we've partnered with a company called Layton. So they're a consultancy firm. They were, before using DueDil, they were mainly relying on lists that they were getting at events. They were doing a lot of searches on Google, Companies House, and basically spending a lot of time doing manual research. So they brought on board DueDil in 2013. And since using the tool, they've achieved an increase of £60,000 in revenue return per employee. And essentially every day they're securing 1 to 2 extra sales off the back of DueDil. This is mainly because they're now able to spend less time prospecting and more time speaking to the clients, but also being able to identify new companies that they would never have been able to identify without using DueDil. And then Smart Pension. So Smart Pension, slightly different use case here, because they have been using our API mainly. So they came to DueDil a few years ago. They wanted to automate their client onboarding on their website to really minimize the time it takes to sign up on Smart Pension as a client. So they used to take about 2 weeks for any client to complete the onboarding process. And now that they've integrated with DueDil's data using our API, their clients are now able to sign up on their platform in under 90 seconds. So the goal here is to really minimize the drop-off rates on their website, which we have since now, instead of taking 2 weeks to do manual aspects, it's now automated, pulling out all the data automatically and wrapping up the onboarding process and sign-up process within just a few seconds. And that's it. We're pretty much done. So I'm going to take a few questions now.